Captain Rebecca Martinez had been flying for 12 years, but she'd never experienced anything like the hostility she faced at Blackwater Air Base. The transfer from her previous assignment in Texas should have been routine, but from day one, Colonel Harrison Wells made it clear that women didn't belong in his fighter squadron. His sneering remarks about her qualifications and constant questioning of her flight decisions wore on her nerves, but Rebecca had dealt with worse. What she hadn't expected was the systematic campaign to undermine her career. The first incident happened during a routine training exercise. Rebecca was leading a formation of 4 F-16s through a complex maneuver when Wells' voice crackled over the radio, ordering her to abort the mission. There was no emergency, no weather concern, just his arbitrary decision to ground her in front of the entire squadron. When she questioned the order through proper channels, Wells filed a report claiming she had shown insubordination and poor judgment. The black mark went straight into her personnel file. Things escalated quickly after that. Wells began scheduling her for the most dangerous missions while simultaneously restricting her access to proper briefings. He'd change flight plans at the last minute, then blame her when coordination suffered. Other pilots in the squadron started avoiding her, afraid of being caught in Wells' crosshairs. Rebecca realized she was being systematically isolated and set up for failure. The breaking point came during a joint training exercise with visiting NATO forces. Rebecca was assigned to lead a complex intercept mission, but Wells had deliberately withheld crucial intelligence about the exercise parameters. As she approached the target zone, she found herself surrounded by unmarked aircraft that hadn't been in any of her briefings. The radio chatter was encrypted, and her wingman had mysteriously developed communication issues that prevented him from providing support. Rebecca's heart pounded as she tried to identify the aircraft flanking her position. These weren't the friendly NATO jets she'd been expecting. The sleek, matte black fighters moving in perfect formation around her looked like nothing she'd seen in any manual. Their flight patterns were too precise, too coordinated for a standard training exercise. When she tried to contact the control tower, she got only static. That's when she noticed the insignia on the lead aircraft's wing. It was barely visible, painted in dark gray against the black fuselage, but Rebecca's sharp eyes caught it. 3 overlapping triangles forming a stylized phantom. Her blood ran cold as she recognized the symbol from classified briefings she'd received during her previous assignment. The Phantom team was real, and they were here. The Phantom team was a legendary unit that officially didn't exist. Comprised of the military's most elite pilots, they operated outside normal command structures and handled situations that required absolute secrecy. Rebecca had heard whispers about them during her time at the Pentagon, but she'd never believed the stories. Now, surrounded by their aircraft at 30,000 feet, she had no choice but to accept the reality. Lieutenant Colonel Jake Thompson's voice suddenly came through on a secure frequency she didn't know her radio could access. "Captain Martinez, this is Phantom Lead. We've been monitoring your situation at Blackwater. Colonel Wells has been flagged for investigation." Rebecca's mind raced as she processed this information. The Phantom team had been watching her base, which meant Wells' behavior had attracted attention from the highest levels of military intelligence. She keyed her microphone carefully, knowing that everything she said would be recorded and analyzed. "Phantom Lead, this is Captain Martinez. I'm not sure what situation you're referring to, but I'm currently in the middle of what I thought was a NATO training exercise." She kept her voice steady, professional, even though her hands were trembling on the controls. "Negative, Captain. There is no NATO exercise today. Colonel Wells sent you up here under false pretenses. We've been documenting his pattern of harassment and deliberate endangerment of personnel. You're not the first pilot he's targeted, but you might be the last." The implications hit Rebecca like a physical blow. Wells hadn't just been making her life difficult. He'd been deliberately putting her in danger. Today's mission was meant to be another setup, possibly her last. The isolation, the missing briefings, the communication failures. It was all part of a plan to cause an accident that would remove her from the equation permanently. "What do you need from me?" Rebecca asked, her voice hardening with determination. "Right now, just fly steady and listen. We're going to guide you through a series of maneuvers that will look like standard evasion tactics on the recorder, but we'll be documenting every word Wells says over the radio. He's about to reveal more than he intends to." As if summoned by Thompson's words, Wells' voice exploded over the radio. "Martinez, what the hell are you doing out there? You're completely off course and ignoring direct orders. Return to base immediately." Rebecca looked at her instruments. She was exactly where her mission briefing had told her to be. Wells was lying, and now the Phantom team was recording every word. She keyed her microphone with a slight smile. "Colonel Wells, I'm following the mission parameters exactly as briefed. My instruments show I'm on course and on schedule. Could you clarify which orders you're referring to?" There was a long pause before Wells responded, and when he did, his voice was tight with barely controlled rage. "Don't play games with me, Martinez. I know exactly what you're doing up there, and when you get back, there's going to be a full investigation into your fitness for duty." Thompson's voice came through the secure channel again. "Perfect. He just admitted to surveillance and pre-planned retaliation. Keep him talking." Rebecca felt a surge of confidence she hadn't experienced in months. For the first time since arriving at Blackwater, she wasn't fighting alone. The most elite pilots in the military were backing her up, and Wells was about to find out exactly what that meant. The next few minutes unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance. The Phantom team jets moved in and out of formation around Rebecca, their movements too precise and coordinated to be coincidental. To anyone watching on radar, it would look like a complex training scenario. But Rebecca knew she was witnessing something extraordinary. Captain Martinez, Thompson's voice was calm and professional. We're going to need you to execute a series of defensive maneuvers. Colonel Wells is about to order a simulated attack on your position. When he does, we want you to respond exactly as you would in a real combat situation. Rebecca's blood ran cold. A simulated attack. That wasn't in any briefing I received. We know. Wells is improvising, trying to create a situation where he can claim you panicked or showed cowardice under pressure. But we're here to make sure that doesn't happen. Sure enough, Wells' voice crackled over the radio again. Martinez, you have bogies approaching from the southwest. This is now a combat exercise. Engage and destroy. Rebecca's radar screen was empty except for the Phantom team aircraft, which weren't showing up as threats. There were no bogies, no targets to engage. Wells was ordering her to fire on empty air, setting her up to look incompetent or mentally unstable. Colonel Wells, my radar shows no threats in the area. Request clarification on targets. The targets are right in front of you, Martinez. Are you blind or just incompetent? Engage now, that's a direct order. Thompson's voice cut through the tension. Captain, execute evasive maneuvers now. We're going to make this look real. What happened next would be talked about in classified briefings for years to come. The Phantom team jets suddenly accelerated, their formation shifting into an aggressive attack pattern that would have been impossible for any normal squadron to execute. Rebecca found herself in the middle of the most advanced aerial demonstration she'd ever witnessed. The jets moved like they were extensions of their pilots' thoughts, each maneuver flowing seamlessly into the next. Rebecca struggled to keep up, her F-16 groaning under the stress of the high G turns required to match their movements. But she held her position, her training and instincts taking over. Outstanding flying, Captain. Thompson's voice was filled with genuine admiration. You're keeping up with the best pilots in the world. Wells is about to learn what real flying looks like. Over the main radio frequency, Wells' voice was becoming increasingly agitated. Martinez, what the hell is going on up there? Your telemetry is showing maneuvers that shouldn't be possible in that aircraft. Rebecca keyed her microphone, her confidence growing with each passing second. Just following your orders, Colonel. Engaging the enemy as instructed. There is no enemy. You're flying combat maneuvers against empty air. Then why did you order me to engage, sir? The silence that followed was deafening. Wells had trapped himself with his own words, and everyone listening knew it. The Phantom team had maneuvered him into admitting that he'd given false orders, endangered a pilot's life, and lied about the nature of the exercise. Thompson's voice came through the secure channel one final time. "Captain Martinez, you can head back to base now. We have everything we need. And Captain, you just earned yourself some very powerful allies." As Rebecca turned her F-16 toward home, she saw the Phantom team jets peeling away in different directions, disappearing into the vast blue sky as mysteriously as they had appeared. But their message was clear. Colonel Wells' reign of terror was over. The landing at Blackwater Air Base was unlike anything Rebecca had experienced since arriving. Word had somehow spread about the exercise, and pilots and ground crew alike watched as she taxied to her spot. There was something different in their expressions: respect, curiosity, and maybe even a little fear. Wells was waiting for her as she climbed out of her cockpit, his face red with rage. "Martinez, you're grounded pending a full investigation. That display up there was reckless, dangerous, and completely unauthorized." Before Rebecca could respond, a black sedan pulled up to the flight line. Two men in expensive suits got out, their badges identifying them as investigators from the Pentagon. The lead investigator, a tall man with steel-gray hair, approached Wells with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Colonel Wells, I'm Agent David Rodriguez from the Inspector General's office. We need to have a conversation about your training protocols and flight safety procedures." Wells' face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about. Everything here is run by the book." "Is it? Because we have recordings of today's exercise that suggest otherwise. Perhaps we should discuss this in your office." As Wells was led away, Rodriguez turned to Rebecca. "Captain Martinez, thank you for your service today. Your actions may have prevented a serious incident." Rebecca nodded, still processing everything that had happened. "Agent Rodriguez, can I ask who reported the problems here?" Rodriguez smiled, and this time it was genuine. "Let's just say you have friends in high places. Friends who don't like to see good pilots being put in danger by incompetent commanders." Over the following weeks, the changes at Blackwater Air Base were swift and dramatic. Wells was transferred to a desk job pending a full investigation into his conduct. The pilots who had been afraid to speak up before suddenly found their voices, sharing stories of harassment, dangerous orders, and systematic intimidation. Rebecca learned that she hadn't been Wells' only target. 3 other pilots had been transferred out under suspicious circumstances, their careers damaged by negative performance, reports that investigation revealed to be fabricated. The Phantom team had been watching the base for months, gathering evidence and waiting for the right moment to act. The new squadron commander, Lieutenant Colonel Patricia Hayes, called Rebecca into her office on a Thursday morning. Hayes was a respected pilot with a reputation for fairness and competence, exactly the kind of leader Blackwater needed. "Captain Martinez, I've been reviewing your file. Your performance ratings from your previous assignment were exemplary, but the reports from the past few months paint a very different picture. Care to explain?" Rebecca chose her words carefully. "Ma'am, I believe the previous command structure may have had some biases that affected their evaluation process." Hayes smiled. "That's a diplomatic way of saying your former commander was a sexist pig who tried to destroy your career. The investigation has cleared you of all charges, and your record is being corrected to reflect your actual performance." "Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate the opportunity to serve under proper leadership." "There's something else," Hayes continued, pulling out a classified folder. "You've been recommended for a special assignment. It seems your performance during that training exercise caught some attention from very high levels." Rebecca's heart skipped a beat. "What kind of assignment?" "I can't give you details here, but it involves working with some of the most elite pilots in the military. Interested?" Rebecca thought about the Phantom team jets, their impossible maneuvers, and the professionalism of their pilots. She thought about Thompson's voice over the radio, calm and confident, even in the most intense situations. She thought about the chance to fly with the best of the best. "Yes, ma'am, I'm very interested." Hayes handed her the folder. "Report to Hangar 7 at 800 tomorrow. And Captain, this conversation never happened." That evening, Rebecca sat in her quarters, staring at the classified folder. She couldn't open it until tomorrow, but she knew what it contained. The Phantom team was real, and they were offering her a chance to join them. After months of harassment and systematic attempts to destroy her career, she was being invited to join the most elite unit in the military. She thought about Wells, probably sitting in some Pentagon office explaining his actions to investigators. She thought about the other pilots he'd targeted, and how many more might have suffered if the Phantom team hadn't intervened. Justice had been served, but it had come from an unexpected source. Rebecca had always believed in working within the system, following proper channels and trusting in the military's commitment to fairness. But sometimes, she realized, the system needed help from the shadows. Sometimes justice required phantom wings. The next morning, Rebecca reported to Hangar 7 with her gear bag, and a sense of anticipation she hadn't felt in months. The hangar was empty except for a single black jet that didn't match any aircraft in the standard inventory. As she approached, a familiar figure emerged from the shadows. "Captain Martinez, welcome to the team." Lieutenant Colonel Jake Thompson extended his hand with a genuine smile. ready to learn what real flying looks like. Rebecca shook his hand firmly. "I've been ready my whole life, sir." "Drop the sir. We don't stand on ceremony here. We have work to do." As Thompson led her toward the mysterious aircraft, Rebecca felt the weight of her previous assignment lifting from her shoulders. Wells had tried to destroy her career, but instead, he'd inadvertently led her to the opportunity of a lifetime. The Phantom team didn't just protect pilots from corrupt commanders. They turned the best of those pilots into something extraordinary. The aircraft was unlike anything Rebecca had ever seen. Its lines were sleek and predatory, its surfaces covered in a material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. This wasn't just a fighter jet. It was a weapon designed by people who understood that air superiority required more than just speed and firepower. "She's beautiful," Rebecca whispered, running her hand along the aircraft's wing. "She's more than beautiful," Thompson replied. "She's justice with wings, and now she's yours." As Rebecca climbed into the cockpit of her new aircraft, she realized that her story was just beginning. Wells had thought he was ending her career, but instead, he'd launched her into a world where the impossible became routine, where the best pilots in the world worked in shadows to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The Phantom team had flanked her left when she needed them most, and now she was one of them. Colonel Wells would spend the rest of his career explaining his failures to investigators, while Rebecca soared through skis he could never imagine reaching. Sometimes, she thought as the engines roared to life, the best revenge was simply being better than those who tried to bring you down. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, Phantom wings would carry you to heights your enemies could never reach. The investigation into Wells' conduct would continue for months, uncovering a pattern of harassment and endangerment that shocked even seasoned investigators. But Rebecca Martinez was no longer concerned with earthbound justice. She had found her place among the Phantoms, where real justice was served at 30,000 feet, and the only court that mattered was the endless sky. As her new aircraft lifted off from Blackwater Air Base for the last time, Rebecca smiled. Wells had tried to clip her wings, but instead, he'd given her iron ones. The Phantom team had recognized what he couldn't see, that she belonged in the sky, fighting the battles that others couldn't fight, protecting the innocent from those who would abuse their power. The story of Rebecca Martinez and Colonel Wells would become legend in military circles, a cautionary tale about the dangers of underestimating those you seek to destroy. But the real story, the one that would never be told in official reports, was simpler. Sometimes the Phantoms are the good guys, and sometimes justice comes from the most unexpected places. In the years that followed, Rebecca would fly missions that didn't officially exist, protect people who never knew they were in danger, and serve justice to those who thought they were above it. She would become a phantom herself, a guardian angel with iron wings, watching over those who needed protection from corrupt authority. And somewhere in a Pentagon office, Colonel Harrison Wells would spend his remaining years in the military wondering how a simple harassment campaign had led to his downfall. He would never know about the Phantom Team, never understand that his actions had been watched and documented by forces far beyond his comprehension. But late at night, when the sound of jets passed overhead, he would sometimes wonder if those phantom wings were watching him still, waiting for him to make another mistake. The knowledge that justice could come from the shadows, swift and certain, would follow him for the rest of his days. Rebecca Martinez had found her place among the phantoms, and Colonel Wells had learned that some fights you simply cannot win. The sky belonged to those who respected it, and the Phantom Team made sure it stayed that way. In the end, justice had been served at 30,000 feet, delivered by pilots who officially didn't exist, protecting those who needed protection most. The iron wings of the Phantom Team had flanked her left when she needed them most, and now she carried those wings herself, ready to protect the next pilot who found themselves facing impossible odds. The story was complete, but the mission would continue. In the shadows of the sky, the Phantom Team watched and waited, ready to deliver justice to those who thought they were untouchable. And Rebecca Martinez, call sign Iron Wing, would be there to make sure they learned otherwise.